Today's April the 5th, 2022. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program in the OSU Library. And today I'm in Stillwater, Oklahoma, downtown on Main Street, to speak with Ray Smith, a financial advisor for 47 years and owner of Ray Smith with Wealth Management, located here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So thank you for joining me this morning.
You're welcome.
We'll be talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on life in Oklahoma, and in particular about the impact on Ray's work within the financial industry. But before we get to that part, let's learn a little bit about you. Start wherever you like.
Well, I came here in 1969 to go to OSU. I grew up in central Indiana on the southwest side of Indianapolis in what was a little town called Plainfield. It's not a little town anymore. It's basically the whole west side of the Indianapolis airport. We lived there through my freshman year in high school. And then we moved to Muskogee for a year. My dad was with the Veterans Administration.
Cool.
Moved to Muskogee for a year, and then we moved to Northern Virginia outside of Washington, D.C. So I actually graduated from high school from Jeb Stuart High School in outside Falls Church, Virginia. And thought I wanted to be an engineer when I graduated from high school. And Purdue looked at what I had and said, we're sorry, but we've already filled our out-of-state quota with kids smarter than you are. I didn't like Virginia Tech, just didn't care for it. And then there was OSU. And part of the deal was my mother had been stationed here as a wave and did some of her training, wave training with the Navy in the Second World War. And I had an aunt and uncle living in Oklahoma City at the time. They moved before I even got out here. And I think a lot of it was my dad liked the idea of going to school someplace that was a little more conservative than the University of Maryland and the University of Virginia, because they were pretty liberal. They still are pretty liberal. And so he liked that. And there was an ROTC program, and he liked that. And so I was in ROTC here and pledged to fraternity, and found out after a year of engineering I was actually a pre-business major, and finished in 5 years, and met my wife here, and we got married, and she had another year of school when we got married, and I had a friend in the insurance business, and basically said, "You thought about getting in the insurance business?" "Well, no." "Well, let's talk about that." And so here I am 47 years later, and we just sank roots into Stillwater and raised 2 kids, and now we have grandkids that come see us, and really have liked being here, and I don't think we'd like living anywhere else. After having lived in Washington for a couple of years, I could put my game face on and go to the big city. And Kay was from Fort Cobb, or is from Fort Cobb, and that's a little town down in the southwestern part of the state. So this is actually a big town to her. So it was a good mix, and we did something for the Alumni Association about our time here, and I basically said it changed my whole life. My whole life was centered around coming to OSU and going to school and graduating and getting married and staying here, and it just set the stage for the rest of my life, and we're still here. We like to go to the football games and basketball games, and I have a wrestling ticket, and we have the ticket for the Broadway series at the McKnight Center now, and
Orange through and through.
Orange through and through. Have an orange door on the front of our house.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Okay, so if you came in 69, it took you 5 years. You graduated in 74. Then.
74.
When you came, which dorm or where did you live on campus?
The first at first it was 12-story. It later became Wilhelm North, I think. Yeah, because the Wilhelm South, I think, was the women, and it was what became Wilhelm North, but it was known as 12-story then. It was actually 2 stories higher than its sister dorm on the other side of the complex. They did Kerr Drummond and Wilhelm, what became Wilhelm, all the same, so that there were 2 towers on each side with all the common area with dining, and all the rest of that in between. So the girls lived on the south side, and the guys lived on the north side, basically.
And that building's not standing
It's
anymore.
not standing anymore.
Drummond is for the moment.
For the moment.
For the moment.
Yeah. But they were pretty new then. They hadn't been open very long at all. So that was really the kind of cool new place to live. And
what floor were you on?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. But that semester I wound up pledging Phi Kappa Tau, and it was the end of the semester. Before the end of the semester, I think, moved over to the Phi Tau house, and that was pretty much where I was for the next 4.5 years. Some part of that time, we lived in an apartment and rented a house, and actually rented a house from Pat Quirk. If you know anything about Father Pat Quirk.
No, I don't know that name.
That's a whole other story. Met met Kay doing homecoming with the Alpha Delta Pies, and there were actually 4 or 5 or 6 weddings came out of doing homecoming. The Phi Tau's doing homecoming with the Alpha Delta Pies, and
are they still all?
Most of them held up.
Okay.
There was 1 or 2 that didn't, but yeah, we've actually got one of my fraternity brothers and our sorority sisters retired, moved back to Stillwater, and they're living in Stillwater, and they're part of that group. So,
at that point, were they throwing people in the Theta when they got engaged, or had they passed that stage?
Sometimes yes, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
What about you?
They tried.
Okay.
And I was too much to handle. I didn't want to go more than they wanted me to go. So.
Okay, so I always ask this of a freshman. Did you already know how to do laundry, or did you learn that pretty quick when you got here?
My mother made sure I knew how to do it
before you left.
Yeah, I knew several of the kids from Muskogee. I actually wound up living with one of them in the dorm, and then I went to the fraternity house, and then he went to the fraternity house. So he followed me over to the Phi Tau house. But that Sunday when we moved in the dorm and class started on Monday, and that Sunday we're all standing in the front of the dorm waving bye to our parents, and somebody said, "Let's go get a beer." And so we went down to the Wet Olive on the Strip, and we're quickly told, "You stupid freshman, you can't buy beer on Sundays." So we had a burger, went back to the dorm.
Were you even old enough to get a beer?
Well, at that time in Stillwater, it was kind of strange. If you were a college student, nobody seemed to care. Mm. A lot of times, if they wanted to see an ID, your college ID would suffice. Now, the drinking age then was 21, but then it went to 18 for a while when I was in school. Then it went back to 21 after I graduated. But they didn't seem to mind the college students being down on the Strip drinking beer. Mm. And I always wondered if part of that was that, well, at least they're not smoking dope. They're just drinking beer. They're good kids. They're just drinking beer. And when there was an election and the district attorney was running, you would see things tighten up. And then after the election, it was back to the way it was. So it was just a different culture, a different time. And of course, see, the girls at that point, girls that were 18 could buy beer. Okay. Girls could, if a young lady that was 18 could actually walk in a liquor store and get whatever she wanted. The guy supposedly had to wait 21.
Ah, that's interesting.
And see, the drinking age in Kansas was 18. So if you're going to have a party and you wanted hard liquor, somebody would drive up to Ark City, Kansas, and visit a liquor store and come back.
Do a run, huh?
Do a run. So.
Were you one of those?
No,
okay.
I didn't do that. But
did you have a car when you were
here? My sophomore year, I did. I didn't as a freshman.
Well, did you have brothers and sisters?
I have a brother.
Had he gone
He was 2 years younger than I am.
Okay, so
but he came out here to go to school too.
Okay.
Everybody liked it to the point that he came out here, and he was a Phi Tau. So I drug my roommate over to the Phi Tau house. I drove my brother over to the Phi Tau house. So
Hey, did y'all win any of the house decks for homecoming?
yeah, I don't remember homecoming being a big deal. I think it was my sophomore year we decided we were going to do spring sing, and did that I think with the Zetas, and we did a takeoff on Jesus Christ Superstar, and we won. We had a lot of talent in the house that way. There was when I was a freshman, there was still what they called the men's choir, Ashley something was an institution at OSU, and I can't think of his last name right. Ashley Alexander.
I've heard that name.
Was an institution, and we had 3 or 4 guys in the house sang in that choir. So we had some talent in terms of people that could play instruments and people that could sing. I was the lead monotone for spring sing. I can't sing a lick. I was there to take up space and hopefully not sound too far out of key.
Move your lips.
So, but yeah, it was a great time.
Good times. Okay. And I always ask this too, did you visit the library very often?
Not much. Some people really like to study in the library. Some people like to study in the student union. Still do. I always found it distracting. I think I've got a touch of ADHD, hyperactivity, whatever that is. And I think I've actually got a touch of it. And because I can get distracted really easily. I'm probably in a perfect job for me because I wind up doing a lot of different things all day. And you know, I'm not trying to do the same thing over and over and over again. It's a variety of things that I wind up doing all day. And I think I've probably got a touch of that, and that made studying at the library and the student union just make it hard.
Stayed in your room, huh?
Well, more, yeah. I did better doing that than trying to go someplace.
Well, what would be some of the things that you do for fun or for dates?
Oh, well, at that time, the fraternities and sororities did a lot of what they'd call functions, and so and they had what did they call it? All the freshmen men were paired off. The sororities and fraternities would pair off and it'd change every week. And you'd have something that the freshmen went and did. Sometimes there'd be a dance, sometimes it would be cards, sometimes it would be usually not eating, just conversation more than anything. That's really how I met my wife, is we had one of those prior to homecoming. And somebody else I knew at the sorority house introduced me to her.
Okay.
And
love at first sight, almost.
More or less, yeah, kind of, sort of, yeah. So, I mean, those were the things. They used to have dances at the student union ballroom with one of the good local bands. I say local, they might have come from Oklahoma City or Tulsa, but man, I don't remember the name of the bands, but I remember there being a couple of good bands. People like to go down to, it was the Coachman on the Strip. The Coachman's where Fuzzy's is now. Okay. And the Wet Olive was across the street, so people like down at Coachman, they had decent burgers and you could have a Coke or drink a beer, whatever you wanted to do. That was always a popular place. There was a place called Spavs out here on the north side of town. It's not there anymore, at Richmond and Washington on that southwest corner.
Okay.
Spavs was a popular place. They would usually have a band, and they were outside the city limits at the time, so it was probably a little more freewheeling than it might have been had it been in the city limits. It's kind of, I guess it'd be our version then of what's the place out west on Lakeview?
The Tumbleweed?
Tumbleweed, yeah. It was our version of Tumbleweed, basically. Mm-hmm. And that was fun to do, and I mean, there were a couple times several of us took dates out there. You had dates for the football games, and for homecoming you got your date at Corsage, big old thing.
Yeah,
big old thing, yeah.
Mom's usual, or yeah. My date was Mom's.
Yeah, it was a big huge mom. So that's probably a tradition that we're just assuming.
I don't know, it's fun.
So, at the time, some people actually wore ties to the football game. You have a date for the football game, you might wear a tie.
Wow, that's unheard of today.
Yeah, and we were known to sneak a pint of bourbon into the game every once in a while too. So
that probably still happens.
It may still. I don't know. See, you buy beer now, and it's watched a lot closer.
It is,
and it just wasn't. I think everybody knew what was going on. They didn't. It wasn't usually a problem, and I think a difference between my generation and kids now is if the police showed up, everybody walked away. And I think now if the police shows up, somebody's always wanting to go one-on-one with a cop. Mm. You know, they're more combative, where I think we were more likely to fade into the background. And
yeah. Well, I mean, too, now going into the stadium or the arena, even the women have to have a clear bag now. Yeah. So they do check closer now for that sort of thing. Yeah. Well, did you go home very often?
Christmas, spring break, usually. For the summer, I actually lifeguarded for a few years back in Washington, in Northern Virginia. You know, pool lifeguard, which was not like being an ocean lifeguard by a long shot. And as long as you could swim and drag somebody out of the water if you had to, that was basically the criteria. And I didn't think I was ever a strong swimmer, but I was tall enough that I could touch bottom 75% of the pool.
And shove them up, huh? Yeah. Oh, and then during that time, Vietnam War was kind of winding down?
It was starting to. So I graduated in '69, so in '68, you had the Tet Offensive, you had Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated, you had race riots in big cities, and you had the ongoing protests. I didn't really feel like it was winding down until about 1971. And it was when the kids were killed at Kent State. Mm. And we had ROTC drill that day. And usually we drilled where it was the north side of Washington, where the football complex is now, on the north side of Washington, basically, is where we had drills, big open field. And that week they moved us to what they still call Hedge Field, I think, which is the east side of Gallagher-Iva, where that was the practice football field at the time. And you had a hedge and a fence all the way around it so they could control it. And we got in there and they marched us all out. And when they marched us all out, there's where the demonstration was. And somehow we all marched through this and nobody threw a punch at anybody. And I was just sure the fight was going to be on. I was sure all it would have taken was somebody get shoved, and I don't know how that would have ended, but nobody did anything. So we all marched on and went back to where we were living at the time, and life was good. So, but yeah, that was kind of an experience. And then I actually had kind of a middle high draft number. So when they had the lottery, I had kind of a middle high number, so it made sense probably to go ahead and stay in ROTC. I think that must have been between my sophomore and junior year, because I had to make a decision whether I was going to stay in ROTC or not as a junior. And probably the smart thing to do was the little mistake was stay in ROTC. The big mistake would have been to get out and then get drafted. So.
And did you have a discussion with your parents before you made that decision?
Oh yeah. And really, our ROTC was for the most part a good experience, and it got me. And after that, I was in the Army Reserve for like 6 years, because you're supposed to be in the reserve or National Guard or something after you graduated, and so you went and did 90 days active duty, and did what they called your officer's basic class, and mine was at Fort Eustis, Virginia. And so we moved to Tidewater, Virginia for the summer, and then came back a couple weeks early to start class, and I packed up our stuff and took it back to Oklahoma. So then once you got your 90 days in, then you would get assigned to a reserve unit or a National Guard. I got assigned to the reserve unit in Stillwater.
That's a little extra money.
Yeah, it was a little extra money.
What was Kay's major?
Math.
Math. Oh, okay.
and she wound up going to work for a local bank, and wound up eventually being the controller of that bank. And then left there, and she retired from the credit union. It was, what they call now Central Oklahoma Credit Union or something. It was a community and university federal credit union. She was there, but now they've changed the name of it. So.
Well, then your two occupations kind of complemented each other a little.
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
I could understand each other's language a little bit.
Well, maybe a little. Yeah. Yeah. I'm more the freewheeling risk taker, and she's more the button down. What's this going to cost?
I know another couple like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you first came back, you started doing financial advising?
Yeah. I had a fraternity brother in the business, and I was kind of looking around for what I wanted to do. I mean, Kay was going to school, and I actually wound up working for the Veterans Administration, Oklahoma City, on a like a temporary deal, as what they call a contact officer. So you'd meet with people about their benefits, and basically followed the guy that was assigned to the VA hospital. See, the VA is split into two parts. The benefits side, where my dad was, and the hospital side. So I could work for the hospital side, but I couldn't work for the benefits side. But I wound up working benefits at the hospital. If that makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense, and Bill Ralston, I think was his name, took me under his wing for like 3 or 4 months. And that was an experience. And then a fraternity brother said, "You ever thought about being in the insurance business?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Tell me about it." And I'd had another fraternity brother in the business while I was in school. And so we said, so I met with the guy in town he was working with. I said, "Okay, let's give it a go. I need something to do." I kind of like the idea of maybe being kind of independent and determining my own course. And that's what I wound up doing. And actually, before I started, the guy that actually got me interested in it had left. And he passed the CPA exam and moved back to California. And but I wound up going to work for what was then Bankers Life Nebraska, and that was it was 47 years ago, back February the 1st.
Wow.
And at the time, all we did was sell term and whole life. And the company, Bankers Life Nebraska, had a policy that was kind of geared toward a college student. And it was a policy that was part whole life and part decreasing term. And the idea was that it would earn dividends, and the dividends would be used to buy more permanent life insurance, and the permanent life insurance would offset the decreasing term life insurance. And it was a great little contract, actually, looking back on it. It was a great little contract. And anybody that has one of those, if they've still got it, the dividends are paying the premium on it, and have been for several years. So it was a great little contract. It was easy to sell. It was like a $25 a month commitment, and honestly, if you didn't have $25 a month, they didn't have any business talking to you anyway. So a lot of insurance that was sold at the time to college students was quote unquote financed. I never liked that idea, and we never did that. That's really how I got started. And then another fraternity brother worked in payroll, and the first time I had somebody with interest in a tax sheltered annuity, and I called Paul and said, "How do I do this?" And he said, "I'll put you on the payroll system." And that's all there was to it. Normally, you're supposed to have 10 people lined up or something, and it wasn't easy. And Paul just, "I'll put you on the payroll system. Don't worry about it." And so, that helped get me started. And so I actually probably made more of an effort to work with young faculty, assistant professors. And at the time, most people didn't have a lot of student loan debt.
Yes.
It's so much different today. And most of those people, they're probably one spouse, the other had worked while the other was going to graduate school. Then in some cases, one worked and the other one went to graduate school, and then when the one finished, the other went to graduate school. That sound familiar?
Yeah, very, very familiar.
And so it wasn't. People were so strapped with student loan debt that they just couldn't hardly do anything to take care of that. So it was a different culture. It was a different time. OSU put money into TIAA. They put money into Oklahoma Teacher Retirement. But a lot of people were interested in having a little more money going into a tax sheltered annuity than OSU was doing at the time. And so it was a good place to be. It was something I could run with and work with, and spend a lot of time on campus, mostly talking to new assistant professors.
And did that change over the years? I mean, when we first came, we would see you on campus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it did change over the years. Part of it was the way OSU changed the retirement system over the years. Part of it was the student debt load. So things that maybe worked at one point didn't work so well, and it was you kind of pivoted from that. But yeah, there was a day I could walk across. I'd go meet someone in your office. We'd walk to the student union, get a Coke or a cup of coffee or something, or walk over to the old dairy bar. Mm-hmm. There was another one. There was the other one, and after your day call, let's go across the street, and just kind of sit down and try to get to know somebody over a cup of coffee or a Coke. I don't really drink coffee, but I obviously drink Diet Coke.
Or ice cream, huh?
Yeah.
A shake, huh?
And that's basically what did it. The other thing that helped in '93, OSU changed the retirement system, and the short story is everybody had free money that had been going into retirement. They had to decide if they would keep it going into retirement, if they're going to spend it. Well, that was a big time for Ray. I had a young lady working for me that had worked for a telemarketer. And I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to call all these people and say, would you like to sit down with Ray and talk about changes in the retirement system? And almost every one of them said yes. And I was running 7, 8 appointments a day for, a couple months. You'd get through them all. And it was all variable annuity business with what was then now Emeritus Life Insurance Corp. And they issued, I think for a while I held a record for the number of annuities issued in one day at Emeritus, because they all were, it was like a July 1 thing. The thing changed on July 1, and July 1 we issued a bunch of variable annuities.
That gets you a bonus of some kind.
Well, yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt, no.
Yeah, so, and then in the mid-'80s, Emeritus decided they were going to do a broker-dealer. Wanted to have a broker-dealer, so we do stocks and bonds, and I was in the first bunch that they licensed to sell securities. So then we were talking about mutual funds and stocks and bonds and all of that. So
Can I have the right time, right place, right time, and motivated?
yeah,
Those three things.
yeah. So so it's changed an awful lot from 1975. It's not hardly recognizable anymore. But yeah, it's been a journey. It keeps you going.
Okay, then that's a good time to segue into, like, the couple of years before COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like versus the year? We
Well, before COVID, I've always liked having lunch with clients. That's a great time to build a relationship with a client, or either that or just have, like, that Coke or coffee. You go back over to university and do that. My first general agent, Jim Conkin, said, go buy people lunch and go buy them a cup of coffee. And I took that to heart and pretty much did that. And so, especially on birthdays, I always tried to send somebody a birthday card and say, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee, or let me buy you lunch, whatever worked out. And there was still a lot of that. By then, we had a lot of people come into the office instead of me going wherever I was officed out on Western. And for a lot of people, it was easy to drop by at noon, or coming home from work, or going to work, or whatever. And so that was kind of a transition. But there was still a lot of face-to-face. And most of all, it was face-to-face. Either meeting in the office, or we'd have lunch, or I'd go to the campus, however it worked out. And March of 2020, when it came to a screeching halt, I had actually gone, AIC had a conference in Las Vegas. AIC is Emeritus Investment Corp. And they had a conference in Las Vegas, and I flew out there for that. And then that was like the first week of March, like March 5th or something. And a lot of people elected not to go. I went anyway, and even when we went out, it was obvious that we had a problem, because I'd never seen a Dallas airport so quiet. And the plane wasn't full, and it was quiet. And some people were masked, some people weren't. And we got out to Vegas and had I thought a good meeting, and came back, and I think it was that Friday, they had the Thunder game just canceled.
That's March 10th or 11th.
Yeah,
like
yeah, it was like the next Friday, I want to say. And everybody crawled under their beds or desks, or wherever they crawled to, and that was tough. That was tough. That was also that we had a sharp drop in the stock market, and I just picked up the phone and started calling people. I mean, that's what I do. I would see stuff in the trade publications about, well, you need to be calling your clients. Really? Somebody has to tell you to do that? And it'll be okay. And it was about that time I went on Facebook and and said, I got up in the middle of the night last night and turned on the TV, and there was a documentary about 1968. In 1968, I was starting my senior year in high school. And the documentary talked about the Tet Offensive, and Martin Luther King was assassinated, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, we had race riots. I sat there and thought, what a terrible year. I got through that year. I got through that year just fine. It's just a faded memory, not necessarily a great memory, but a faded memory, and we're going to get through this. And that's what I put on Facebook, that if we made it through 1968, we're going to make it through 2020. And it's seldom as good or as bad as it seems at the time. And then sometime after that, I don't remember if it was one of our national meetings it's the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, whether it was that or I want to say it was one of those meetings, but it might have been an awareness meeting. And one of the key people that talked had been a Vietnam POW. And he said that the POWs that tended to put a timeline on everything. I know we'll be home by Christmas kind of thing, right? I know we'll be home by Easter. And they weren't home. And it was devastating every time. And the people the POWs that tended not to do that, to just take it one day at a time, were the ones that did the best. And I put that on COVID too. Don't start thinking that it'll be over by fall, it'll be over by Christmas. I said, just take it one day at a time. And I still think that's good advice. Even today, we've kind of got it under control. I don't think anybody knows for sure.
Well, had you used social media much before that point?
Probably used it a lot more since.
Learned
how to do Zoom pretty quick.
Oh.
And I would always give, I was still calling people, because before COVID, I'd always call and say, let's look at every quarter. We want to look at your accounts. Here's what's happening. This is what I think. I was still doing that. I was just given the opportunity to talk on the phone or set up a Zoom call. And most of the time we're talking on the phone. And so now it's the first quarter. It's time to go do that again. And I will probably see more of them face to face. I'd really like to see more of them face to face right now, because we haven't had a good market or a good quarter for investments. It's not terrible, but it's the worst quarter we've had in 2 or 3 years. So people have seen this before; they just don't remember seeing it. And so I think it's important to have those face-to-face conversations and show them why it's not that big a deal, that it's not that big a concern, and here's why we think that. In fact, I had Carol binding up some stuff I could put in here and with some charts just to make my point.
To educate us?
Well, somewhat, yeah.
Well, would people call you, or did you do most of the calling at the beginning of all this?
I probably did most of the calling. I was more proactive about it. I thought I needed to be. I thought it was smart. I thought it was good business. Every once in a while somebody would call me, but by and large, I was proactive and called them.
Were they most concerned about the volatility of the market?
The dip happened so fast that within a month you could see that it had turned around going the other way. So I don't think anybody was too concerned. Okay. And most of them, you get to sit there and say, look, we've seen this before. We saw it in 2008, we saw it in 2002. And the smart move is to stay invested and let it come back around. And the big mistake is to get out when it's down and take your loss, and then you don't know when you're going to get back in.
Don't panic.
Yeah. So
in for the long haul.
Yeah.
Was there a change in life insurance? Are people interested in checking out that more, or
I think so. Yeah. I've always said when the economy is good and times are good, people are how can I put this? People are more self-assured, and as soon as it turns around and goes the other way, they start to think maybe I'm not quite as clever as I thought I was, and maybe I want to make sure I'm doing this right. Rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so you can think you're a pretty good sailor when the tide's coming in. When the tide's going out, that may be a different story.
You don't have to name names, but did any of your clients get COVID to a serious degree?
Yeah. I had at least one die. And had him insured. There was at least one, and there were, I'm trying to think who else. I actually had it last October, but I'd been vaccinated, and I've had colds that were worse.
So it took over a year for you to get it, to catch it too.
Yeah. And it's stayed home. Stayed home that week and then came back, and it wasn't a big deal. And we think that we got it down in Dallas. We went to see the grandkids, and one of their little friends came down with it the next week. Well, then Kay came down with it first. He had a cough, and it was like Sunday night. And I looked at her and I said, "You running a fever?" And she said, "I don't think so." Yeah, she was. And so we started figuring out what to do about that, and then she just kind of sloughed. Her body just kind of sloughed it off. But 4 days later, I had it, and I just didn't have I had probably as mild a case as you can get. I actually had an infusion treatment. The Steve Cummings was their doctor, and Steve said, "Why don't you go over to the hospital and get an infusion treatment just to be safe?" I said, "Okay." But that wasn't a big deal either. You laid there for an hour, and they put this thing in your arm, and then they switched that. That didn't take but a couple of minutes, and they put some saline in there and sent you on your way. So
you had the vaccines plus the booster
I got vaccinated, and I had the infusion treatment. I had to wait 90 days to get the booster.
Okay.
But 90 days, I was getting the booster, and we just hadn't been a big deal for the Smiths.
So when it first came about, though, did you close the office?
No. We the bank stayed open. I think it was the only one in town that did stay open. But they limited how many people could be in the lobby, and everybody was supposed to wear a mask. And we were so isolated up here, actually, that we just didn't think it was a big deal. And so we just kind of hung out up here, and if we'd go out of the office, we'd put a mask on, and if we're in the office, generally we didn't. And as time went on and people came to see us, we might have a mask on when they got here. It was kind of you call it. If you're comfortable without a mask, I'm comfortable without a mask. If you want to wear one, I can wear one. It's whatever floats your boat. So it was, we stayed here and just kept doing what we were doing.
And the city had one for a while, briefly, didn't it? Didn't it have a mask mandate?
Oh, yeah.
For a while, it was controversial.
Yeah. And didn't really ever bother me. It made perfect sense. Of course, I tend to follow this. I've always said one of the great things about what I do is I get to work with a lot of people that are smarter than I am. And when the people are smarter than I am sit there and say, "You really need to take this seriously, be wearing a mask," yeah, I kind of go along with that. When you got clients that are geneticists and biologists, and right, they might have a point.
So I take most of your clients are still connected to the university.
A lot of them are.
The majority of them.
Probably half what I've done's been on the university, and half of it's been in town with businesses, small businesses, and that's probably still the case. I always thought it was that two-pronged approach was a good move. Because something happened in one that you couldn't foresee, and then you had, wasn't devastating. And that always just made sense to me to have kind of a two-pronged approach and do it that way.
So insurance, life insurance, people wanted to review their policies, death benefits and such?
They were pretty much on that. One thing I was concerned about were the beneficiary designations up to date.
Oh, okay.
I've had a number of clients over the years buy insurance policies for the kids. I had one on each of my kids. I had one on each of my granddaughters. I just think it's a good thing to do for them. And in a lot of cases, we hadn't named a contingent owner for those policies. So one thing I wanted to make sure I went back through and made sure that the kids, for the most part, were the contingent owners. So if dad's the owner, dad dies, the policy can go over to the kids, but it's a mess. It's a paperwork mess. And if they already named the contingent owner, it's just automatic. So it was just a good practice. And then beneficiary designations were the same way. We need to change the beneficiary designations. You're still married or you're still not married. We've got your kids. Do you want to make a trust the beneficiary? Just have those conversations. And do you think that the coverage you got is adequate now? And sometimes it was, and sometimes it wasn't. OSU actually reduced the amount of group life insurance the employees could have. Mm-hmm. And I think they limited to $100,000. Well, if you had $200,000 with OSU, well, now you had half what you had. So is that a problem? Some cases yes, some cases no. So
you think about this during your sleep.
Sometimes. More likely in the shower. I'm a better thinker in the shower than.
Well, while COVID was hot and heavy, did that impact new clients? You recruited new clients? Ability to?
Probably some, yeah. It was just harder to get out and meet people. It was harder to establish a new relationship. One of the things, Emeritus has been my primary company for 47 years. And so one of the things that Emeritus did, a couple things they did, is they went ahead and brought on a new underwriting procedure where if you fit the criteria, we didn't have to get you a medical exam, up to like $1 million in some cases. Didn't have to get you a medical exam, and we did the whole thing online. And so the application would be, I would email the application to you to finish and sign. You would email it, then it would go on to Emeritus, and I would sign it electronically, and it would go on to Emeritus. And that enhanced underwriting like that probably made a big difference. The other thing that happened is that Emeritus had always planned for an event like this. The home office is in Lincoln, Nebraska, and so if you had a tornado at the home office, like it hit that hospital in Joplin, Missouri, mm-hmm. You're out of business. You're left with nothing to work with. Well, several years ago, we merged with acquired a company called Union Central in Cincinnati, and so we actually had two home offices, one in Lincoln, one in Cincinnati. But when COVID hit, they let everybody stay home. Well, Emeritus spent like $1 million to make sure all the employees had good computers at home and good internet connections at home, so that people could continue to work at home. And by and large, that's worked out really well. And I've got another group that I work with that did the same thing, and by and large, it's worked out very well. But they had planned for it and were ready for it. The only time it doesn't work very well is if there's something exceptional. because now those people can't turn around to their pod mate and ask a question. They can't pick up and go down to the supervisor's office or the supervisor's pod and say, what I do with this. Then now it's an email and back and forth, and those have been few and far between. But every once in a while, there's a challenge with one. And probably the good thing is haven't been with the company long enough that I know where to go to get that stuff handled. I actually had to do that yesterday or Monday or Friday. It was actually Friday, and then I got the answer Monday because we were bogged down. I knew where to go to unbog it. So that's from time to time it's been a challenge. Maybe not that big a challenge.
Well, if your office remained open, you didn't have to worry so much about having that at your home.
Yeah.
Where you just came on in here.
Just came on in here and took care of it.
So you were able to keep that separation between home and work. Some people have had to negotiate, navigate that too.
Yeah. The kids down in Dallas work from home. In fact, my son-in-law, I think, is still working from home for the most part. Probably the hard thing was not seeing the grandkids for a period of months. And because nobody wanted to travel and do those things. I was fortunate that it wasn't that big a problem because the kids in Dallas formed their own little pod with 2 other families. And all these kids had been going to school together since preschool, since daycare. And everybody got along. And to the point that, one parent has the duty to pick up all of them from school or take all of them to school, and then they switch that off, they rotate that off so somebody's got a different day. They've got that worked out, and they were all just real careful. And eventually, the COVID did catch up with all that because that's how the wife and I got it, right? But that was their approach, and it made it easier to go down there and see them. It was kind of interesting to go from Stillwater, where everybody was supposed to wear a mask, to stop and say Priscilla, and nobody was wearing a mask. Walking in the Lowe's, and people were like, "You're wearing a mask?" Yeah, I am. And so that was a little bit of a challenge too. But we got FaceTime right, so we FaceTime with the kids every week, at least once a week.
Had to learn to do that, haven't we, with this, or do it more.
And now my son's moved to Dallas, so we see him all on the same trip. So.
Well, other things that may have altered during the first 6 months or so was like daily eating out, or had that impact?
We didn't eat out all that much, maybe. Before. I really do most of the cooking. And so we didn't really probably change very much. It was more a matter of just getting to the grocery store and or Walmart to get what you needed. And
are you ordering online?
We did a little bit.
Yeah,
we did a little bit. We would still get a pizza every once in a while, and we'd just leave it on the front porch. We'd pick it up. When I had COVID, actually, Kay was getting over and I had it, which actually went online to order groceries from Homeland. Okay. And did that all online. And a couple hours later, here's a young man setting the stuff on the front porch. And me going out, and he's getting in his car and saying thank you, and bringing it all in the house. And that's as probably close as we ever got to any of that.
Do you do that today?
No.
Okay, just when you had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never done that. I'd rather go.
It actually worked pretty well. Yeah. What I was, and I know Roger Fry, who runs the Advantages to Homeland. Roger says the people that do that are pretty conscientious about getting good, picking the produce and picking the meat that you want, and they're pretty conscientious about doing it because they're basically working for tips, and so they're trying to hey, it's working in your best interest kind of thing, which I hadn't thought much about, but it made sense. And that was really our experience was if you still got good produce, even if somebody else is picking it out.
Well, did you notice things in your neighborhood, changes in your neighborhood, like more people out or not out? Or?
Well, see, we live on the east side of the lake, so yeah, that was a big deal. Was you saw a lot more people using the park, and I play golf. The golf course got really busy.
Outdoors.
Yeah, you're outdoors. Some things changed. They took all the water jugs off the course. They took all the ball washers off the course because you touched those, right? You played with the flags in on the green, so you didn't pull the flag out. And if you were smart, you avoided picking up a tee off the ground because you didn't know. The farther you got into it, on a hot July day, I wasn't too concerned about picking up a tee that had been lying out in the sun in the heat in the sun for a couple hours. I didn't think that was a huge risk. But if you went out this morning, though, you might want. Then, if it was cool or cloudy, and you might not do that. But what else changed out there? Basically, you didn't hand somebody a club. You picked up your own ball. You didn't pick up somebody else's ball and hand it to them.
Were there rules of conduct like that written down somewhere, or you're just common sense?
It was more there. I saw it written down someplace, but it was common sense as much as anything. I joked with the guys in the clubhouse second time I went out there. You're supposed to fill in your divots with sand, so there's a sand jug. And so I grabbed the sand jug and filled up my divot, and I thought, oh, I should have touched that jug. Nah, nobody fills their divots anyway but me, so. And they said, yeah. So there wasn't much risk in grabbing the sand jug because there weren't very many people that ever grab them.
Yeah.
More people need to than do.
You just have usually one glove, right?
Yeah.
You don't have two on golfers, just have one.
Yeah, so it changed, but that was a good, we got to the point where we were playing Friday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, most every week. Still trying to do that. Sometimes it doesn't work out, so.
Well, then your season tickets to football and basketball and.
Football was, I've got a picture of me and Everly, who's the oldest grandchild, at Boone Pickens Stadium for a football game. We're with selfie, but we both got masks on, and we have club seats, and so they really restricted the number of club seats that were available. We wound up still with club seats, but they tried to encourage everybody to stay masked and spread out. And basketball games are the same way. Our basketball seats changed for a year, and everybody tried to encourage everybody to spread out and wear a mask. And
they had them grip tied or whatever that.
Yeah.
So you couldn't sit there.
Yeah, in the basketball, in Galgarama they did, yeah. And they may have done that in the football stadium too, now that I think about it. Concessions were kind of they quit taking cash to concessions. You could get concessions, but you had to put it on a card. And they still don't take cash now, which probably makes sense.
I hadn't noticed that. Okay. So this past year you had to have a card?
I think so, yeah. I don't think they're still thinking, at least not up in the club. And so that was different. We had the kids were here one weekend where there was a football game that afternoon, a basketball game that evening. And I wound up taking Everly to the football game. We had a good time. And tried to take Peyton, who was the younger one. Now, this was like a year ago, right? So Peyton would have been 4. And she lasted about 5 minutes in the basketball game, which I kind of expected. And then, it was an early game. One of those early non-conference games. I kind of said, well, we'll try this. I took 1 to 1. I'll take the other and the other, and we'll see how it goes. And so.
I'll explain this whole situation to them. Do they get it?
Yeah, they did. They did. And I think that they dealt real well with it. And I'm probably going to make somebody mad saying this, but I think it's because Mom and Dad just accepted it and went on, right? This is what we're going to have to do, and this is what we're going to do. And, didn't whine and moan and complain and just, we're going to do this for the greater good and go on. And Dallas was pretty strict about wearing a mask. Most every place you went in Dallas, they were pretty strict about it. They were a lot stricter there than what you really saw in Stillwater, even with the mask mandate. You just didn't walk into Central Market or the Kroger or Specs and not have a mask on, and everybody there had a mask on. So there were places we went. Now we didn't go like to the mall or anything right then, but where we did go, yeah, everybody had a mask on. Of course, we didn't go out and eat. We'd eat at the house or go pick something up, go through a drive-through window, pick something up.
So, we just passed our 2nd year mark.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember anything significant happening at that 1st year mark. If anybody even made a big deal out of that first year? Because vaccines were available by that point.
Were available. I think any place that was still mandating a mask, you probably saw people complaining about doing it. Interesting thing, at the McKnight Center, everybody's wearing a mask at the McKnight Center. Now, the only difference was when, who was the country western? Tim McGraw was there. You kind of know, we were up high because that wasn't our rate. This was an extra thing for us, so we were up high in the balcony. Everybody up there was wearing a mask. Maybe not so much down on the floor. But everything else we've been to, everybody's been wearing a mask. And it's in the contract for the people that are performing.
Even this year?
Yeah.
Even
so far this year.
Currently?
Yeah. Now we'll see moving on. We have tickets to see South Pacific here in a couple of weeks. So we'll see what they do with that.
Yeah, they've changed our signage on campus. It doesn't say expected, masks are expected. It's switched to masks are encouraged.
Yeah.
So we're trying to step down a step.
Well, the Civic Center, we've had tickets for their Broadway series at the Civic Center in Oklahoma City. They've been pretty strict about wearing masks. You can't get in the building without wearing a mask. Of course, they screen everybody coming into the building anyway. It's you got to walk through a metal detector to even get in. And you better be wearing a mask or you're not walking in.
Well, let's switch topics just a little bit and talk about where you got your news. If that changed from before COVID to during COVID, keeping up with all of this.
I am a avid newspaper reader. I like to pick up the newspaper and read the newspaper. And I've had a subscription to Time magazine since I think I was in college. Mom and Dad always had one. The Time in Life, of course, the Life finally went away. And the Time, and I'll always pick. I get a Time most every week, and I was reading it last night during the ball game, and just to keep up with what's going on. And so we take the news press and the Oklahoman, and those are certainly changed. Now we get the news press and the mail 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 3 days a week. The good news is when it comes to mail, it's not wet.
Yeah.
And now the Oklahoma doesn't come on Saturdays. Both of them have an e-edition, so I've got the app on my phone, and the last Saturday discovered how to make the app work better with the Oklahoman. just stumbled on it. It drives me nuts. There's never any directions with this. Our kids pick this stuff up. I don't know how they know what to do, but they know what to do, right? And we'll pick the same thing up and they'll watch it and say, why don't you do it this way? I didn't know I could do it that way. That's easier. So I'm kind of transitioning over to e-paper slowly.
Well, at the beginning, were you checking to see what the numbers were? If the numbers were rising or lowering, or all that sort of thing.
A lot of people did that, right? Because that was always a concern. That was pretty well an indication. It was August in 2020 before it really hit Stillwater hard, and that's when the kids came back. And you could just see, if you were paying any attention, you could just see a big spike in the numbers. And the fact that the hospital was just about overwhelmed. I mean, that probably was an indication to me as much as anything how serious this thing was. When the ICU is full, when the hospital is full and the ICU is full, it's not a good day to have a heart attack. Right?
Yeah, or anything else.
Or anything
Sprain your
else.
ankle or anything.
Yeah. So that's a real problem. And now we finally have come back off those numbers, but it's been pretty much up and down from August of 20 to the end of 21. I think now we're into 22. It's finally backed off, and I think one of the things that's got to be fixed going forward is you've got a care system that can handle this better. We need to find out a better way to do that. Instead of running the nurses and the doctors ragged, making them get to the point where they're burnt out. That's not good. And it was worse in other places. It was way worse in other places than there was here.
So is there a new normal? Have you
know.
got to a new normal?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, we're kind of back to trying to have lunch or have a cup of coffee with people and having more face-to-face meetings. Everybody's gotten Zoom exhaustion, so it's.
Yes. Are you back to handshakes? Or fist bumps or whatever.
Yeah.
For a while we couldn't do that even.
Yeah.
No handshakes, no hugs, no.
Yeah. When we started having noon lines again in person, or for a lot of 2020, we were doing virtual, which just wasn't quite the same. Probably hurt the Lions. Being virtual probably hurt the Lions Club, and we're kind of building back off of that now. But you go, and one guy, bless his heart, always wanted to shake your hands. I was like, nope, not doing that.
You just told him that?
Yeah. Nope, not going to do that. Not a good practice right now. No. And
how did he react when you said that?
He got like, well, okay, whatever. He has one of those personalities that just kind of rolled off his back. You couldn't offend him. But just kind of. He thought it was okay, and I didn't think it was okay. So, and then the majority was with me for the most part. But we went from sitting 6 or 8 to the table to 4 to a table, and wear your mask when you're not eating or drinking. Then we're pretty much off all that now. So yeah.
So almost back to normal instead of a new normal, back to normal.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed in our neighborhood the family activity outside picked up bicycles. Mom and Dad and kids were all riding bicycles.
Sure, yeah.
And they sold out at Walmart. I mean, I looked at it and it didn't have a single bike a couple of times I was there. And then I noticed street noise was less. It was really quiet. Just if you walked on the sidewalk there on 19th.
Oh yeah.
No, very little traffic.
Yeah.
Noise levels changed.
Nobody had anywhere to go.
Yeah. Nowhere to go, and then laughter with the kids and enjoying having parents with them.
Yeah.
And that kind of has switched back
now that you don't see as many out together as a group.
Well, they're all at the ball games and soccer matches and all the stuff that they couldn't do.
Yeah.
We played golf Sunday afternoon, and across the street over there at the park, it was absolutely packed with parents and kids for baseball. I guess it was all baseball. Someone might have been softball. But the parking lot was full.
People just ready to get back to pre-COVID normal.
Yeah.
Well, as we wind up, if you're looking back big picture, is there anything that's changed during all of this that you think is going to stay in place from your perspective for your work?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Using social media still? Let's continue to use that some.
Yeah, you've got to use that and continue to use that. Actually, I think people are burnt out on some of that. I made a change in emails, and so it used to be we'd mail out newsletters. Well, we're pretty much emailed the newsletters now. And I've had a couple people come back and opt out of the emails. I actually need to sit down with them and ask them why. Whether it was just they didn't think it was relevant, or they're just overwhelmed by emails, or
it's that one.
Yeah, I think it's probably that
for
one.
some of us.
Yeah. I mean, y'all get them, I think.
Yeah.
So, so trying to do that, and some of the social media. Social media is actually pretty easy. The Emeritus just does stuff that I can share. Lifehappens.org does stuff you can just hit share and send it out, and it'll be stuff like, is your insurance coverage up to date? Have you checked your beneficiaries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and there's been some times when Emeritus has done a series of like, what is an annuity? What is a 401k? So it's easy to set up to get that stuff out once you kind of figure it out. So we've done that. Probably will continue to do that, but it's beyond that. It's still just contacting people on a regular basis.
Well, then one thing we haven't talked about is did you see an uptick in early retirements or change in retirement plans?
Not that much, I don't think. Some people retired, but they were probably in a place where they're going to retire anyway. Probably the exception of that may be at OSU, and it kind of depends on your outlook. If you're tired of the bureaucratic hurdles, if you're tired of teaching these kids is just different than it used to be. You get the Gen Y and now Gen Z kids, and they learn differently, they interact differently, and so I've seen people that have either retired or they're planning on retiring, and a lot of times that figures into it. My general rule is, and was and still is, if you like what you're doing, why stop? And that kind of applies to me, right? So people say, when are you going to retire? I don't know. Most mornings I don't want to get up and go to work. But if you're not having fun doing it, then probably it's time to go find something else to do. And those have been probably the two things I've seen repeatedly, and it's more OSU oriented, that they're tired of fighting the bureaucracy, and they're tired of trying to interact with these kids that are on a whole different level.
And not necessarily because of COVID changes?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, COVID might have pushed a couple of them over the edge, but by and large, it was other things, I think, impacting why they wanted to retire more than COVID impacted why they wanted to retire.
More than one factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was reading something that you put on Facebook. No, it wasn't Facebook. It was something else that said your business is dealing with twin problems, living too long and dying too soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Where did you come up with that?
Oh, that's an old one. That's an old one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and one of the interesting things about what I do is there are no new ideas. They're just recycled ideas, and we all steal ideas from each other. And yeah, that's an old saying that you're planning on either living too long or dying too soon. That's the one is life insurance and one is an annuity, right? And one is retirement income. And you don't want to outlive your retirement income, and you don't leave your family or your business in the lurch if you don't make it to retirement.
And your job is to help us figure out that magic spot, huh?
Yeah, try to.
Do you imagine doing it for much longer?
I don't know. I'm 70, but I just kind of like to energize everybody, I guess. There was a gentleman named Claude Bradshaw that, if you ever knew Gerald Bradshaw, it was his dad. The legend goes that Mr. Bradshaw was still selling insurance policies even though he was living in a nursing home. And after being around, I kind of believe that. I don't know if I'll go that far, but I'm in a business that I can do as much as I want to do or as little as I want to do. And so it's not like I got to show up at 8 o'clock every morning and leave at 5 o'clock every day. If I want to come in late or I need to come in late, I can do that. If I need to come in early, I can do that. If we want to pick up and go to Dallas, see the kids, I can do that. And so it's I've got a lot of flexibility. I can take off on Friday afternoon, go play golf, and nobody's going to. In fact, most of my clients expect me to be gone Friday afternoon to play golf.
So are you training anyone to come in and pick up where you left off? Is the next?
We've danced around that. I'm actually an affiliate of Tax Favored Benefits in Kansas City. I got affiliated or attached to them 5 or 6 years ago now. And it was changes in that were coming in retirement plans, specifically 401k plans. And I've done some retirement plan business. But we were faced with a situation where you had to get big or go home. Mm. And they're an old, we had all the same company affiliations. And they were a big operation, or still are a big operation with Emeritus. And they run with something like 500 401k plans. And so we kind of came to an agreement. The short story is they actually asked me to join them before I had a chance to ask them if I could join them. And it's been, anytime I need help, I've got help, and otherwise they leave me alone. We have an agreement in place that if something should happen to me, that they would keep the office open here for a while and keep Carol on the payroll for a while, and everything I'm doing would be picked up by somebody with tax favored benefits. And that's as far as we've gotten with that.
Well.
And the problem with the succession plan beyond that is you got to kind of have an idea in mind when you will leave, and I just haven't gotten there yet.
So all this goes back to your fraternity brother that said, "Hey, what do you think about this?"
Yeah, basically.
And you saying, "Why not?" Coming
to Oklahoma State because I thought I wanted to be an engineer and I didn't like Virginia Tech, and pledging a fraternity and meeting the wife and
set everything in motion.
Yeah.
Out of state tuition wasn't too expensive.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was not much more than in-state tuition in Virginia, and it was less than out-of-state tuition in Maryland. And so, yeah, and I think I said that I think Dad liked the idea that this is a more conservative campus and I could be in ROTC. My dad was in the reserves my dad made a second career out of the Army Reserves. Mm-hmm. he retired after 20 years as lieutenant colonel. So he thought that was a smart thing to do, and I didn't really ever think it wasn't. It was a good experience. It was a good experience.
So home is Stillwater.
Home is Stillwater.
Home is Stillwater. And no regrets.
No.
Okay, so 50 years from now, what would you want? What should people know about these last 2 years?
That you'll get through it. That things are seldom as good or bad as they seem at the time, and you'll get through it. And don't expect to get through it by Christmas or Easter. Just take one day at a time, and you'll get through it. Be smart. Be smart. Follow the science. So many people have died because they didn't follow the science. And be smart about it, follow the science. And the little mistake is to put a mask on, and the big mistake is not, and get COVID and die.
Can't say any plainer than that, can we?
Yeah.
Okay, then my last question is, how do you want people to remember Ray Smith?
Oh, that he was a good guy. He took care of his family. He took care of his clients. That he had a successful practice. And he could be your friend, and I guess that's as much as anybody can expect.
Then I have to ask you, have you gotten a hole in one?
Yes.
Just one, or how many?
Just one.
Just
no,
one.
Just on my birthday.
How long ago?
Oh, this was 10 years ago.
Okay.
Number 16 at the country club.
Okay. Well, let's hope that you get another one then.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, thank you for sharing this one. It's been great.
Well, you're welcome. Happy to do it.